Hello, lover. You've just entered a portal of pleasure, power, and deep, unapologetic sensuality. This is Talk Tantra to Me, where we liberate your authentic self, reclaim the wisdom of the body, and let pleasure lead the way. I'm your guide, Leola, tantrika, pleasure priestess, best-selling author of Sacred Sex Ed, and devoted student of the erotic mysteries. I'm here to strip away shame and awaken your most radiant, sacred, and sensual self. Get in, babe. We're conspiring for your most pleasurable life and seducing the world into a greater good. So, take a deep breath with a vocal exhale, relax that delicious body of yours, and let's talk Tantra. All right, babe, let's talk about your pleasure power. You know you're meant to experience more ecstasy, more ease, more turn on in your body and in life. But where is your hidden block? What's keeping you from fully owning or receiving even more pleasure in this delicious life? I've created a free pleasure power quiz to help you uncover your unique pleasure archetype and pinpoint exactly where your growth edge is. Also, when you take the quiz, you'll get access to a juicy Tantra ritual, also free and tailored to your unique pleasure archetype. Also, don't miss the Sexual Shadow Work Workbook, your guide to clearing shame, activating your turn on, and stepping into your most radiant and embodied self. Also free. Find them both at www.talktantratome.com/free or get the link in the show notes. Life is about to get very juicy. Welcome to Talk Tantra to Me, back with another juicy episode. Today, I'm starting off with something a little bit spicy and controversial, and that is that I don't trust a lot of women. And I noticed that a lot of women aren't trusting other women and men aren't trusting other women. And I am saying this from a space of deep, deep gratitude because there are incredible women in my life that I trust. But this conversation that we're going to be talking about today is kind of all wrapped up in integrity and stepping into a mature reflection of integrity, both as masculine and feminine beings, as beings that are men and women, and also men that have an inner feminine and women that have an inner masculine. So we're going to be talking about integrity from a tantric lens. We're going to be talking about masculine and feminine integrity. What is masculine integrity? What does that mean? What is feminine integrity? Really diving deep into kind of the difference of those things and really getting into this space of seeing integrity as like deeply attractive and sexy and magnetic. And I'm also going to be sharing probably in the second half of the episode a little bit about my journey with integrity and what is feeling in integrity in this season of life. So let's jump into it. I am going to be looking at my notes every once in a while. So if you see me kind of eyes cast down, this one, there's a lot to cover here. And I really want to make sure that I don't miss anything important. So all of this comes down to integrity, specifically coming back to this idea of like, I don't trust many women. And I'm noticing that a lot of men aren't trusting women either. And to me, it's because women in this season seem to be, especially in like the spiritual communities, seem to have taken an arm and a leg with it. Like, it's like, I think that there's this energy moving through the spiritual space of like listening to your body, you know, slowing down, trusting yourself. And it has created, in my experience, a little bit of entitlement and a little bit of disrespect as well. And it's eroding trust between the masculine and the feminine. So, you know, in Tantra, integrity isn't so much about like moral righteousness or just like doing the right thing, which is, I think when most people think about integrity, they think about a very masculine perspective of integrity, which is, you know, doing what you say you're going to do, following through, living up to your values, which are incredible parameters for integrity. And we're going to dive deeper into the masculine perspective in a moment. But in Tantra, it's not just about like doing the right thing. It's about beingness, right? It's about a deep level of presence and attunement to the current reality, as well as an embodied alignment. It's less of a intellectual experience and more of an embodied experience. It's living in truth, and being just in energetic coherence with your body, your mind, your soul, and what's happening in the present moment, especially if other people are involved with this measure of integrity. So it's not just about, your words and your actions. It's also about your energy and your body. And I want to talk a little bit about like integrity and the definition that has really worked well for me, and the moment that like the idea of integrity really shifted for me. So this happened like maybe a couple of years ago. I saw this post by Andrew Horn, who was on the podcast also probably about 2 years ago. Andrew Horn is an amazing men's coach here in Austin. I haven't experienced his work directly, but I have experienced him directly and other men that have gone through his work. And the podcast that I did with him was really incredible. In that episode, we talked about him going through a divorce and how he did that, in integrity, really. So he is actually a man of deep, deep integrity. Let me see if I can just find the episode number here. So if anyone is like, oh, I really feel called to that, they can. Let's see. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, yeah, so it's episode 132, Relational Leadership, Divorce, and Power Dynamics with Andrew Horn. Highly recommended. That was a popular episode. So that being said, he had this post on Instagram where he shared his own revelation about masculine versus feminine integrity. Like he had this revelation and then shared the revelation, and I really resonated with it. And basically what he shared is that there's this masculine form of integrity that is, generally speaking, following through on what you say you're going to do, living in alignment with your values, doing what else? Yeah, just like all the things that I've already said. Anyways, but then he also shared that this revelation came to him because he was co-facilitating with a woman, and I don't remember who the woman was. So it's that I feel like honestly like this whole conversation is because of her, and I know that he did tag her, but I don't remember who she was. So I'm so sorry if this was you. Please reach out to me and we'll make sure that you get credited in some way, shape, or form. But he had mentioned that this woman had shared her definition of integrity, and her definition of integrity was more feminine in nature. It was really listening to her body, listening to her internal compass, connecting with the divine, and moving in integrity with what was real for her in the moment. Really beautiful expression. Like I think it really kind of aligns with some of these other teachings, like just listening to your body overall, treating your body as a mystery school. If it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no. Although I have a whole podcast episode about how I'm a fuck no to that mentality. But overarching, overall, I do feel that there's, nuggets of wisdom in that mentality. But, oh, sorry, my nose is so itchy. But yeah, so to me, that really shifted things of like, oh, okay, so there is this masculine type of integrity that, I was raised to really identify with and put on a pedestal, but there's also this thing called feminine integrity. And what would it look like for me to balance those? Because that's really what Tantra is about, right? So much of Tantra, so many lineages of Tantra, and even, many other spiritual lineages talk about balancing our inner masculine and inner feminine, and maturing our inner masculine and our inner feminine so that we can come to this place of internal wholeness. When you really master your divine masculine, you step into your king energy. When you master your divine feminine energy, you step into your queen energy. And when you've mastered both your divine feminine and your divine masculine, you can kind of merge into this oneness that's very close to like God-like enlightened energy. Now, this is not something where like you get to a certain level and suddenly you're God consciousness. For most people, it's a it's a constant journey back to that higher self or that God consciousness. There are moments that bring us there. There are moments that take us out of it. And it's this constant journey of getting closer and closer, right? But I really appreciated this perspective. It was something that I had felt in my body, but I hadn't had the words yet to put to that feeling, that somatic experience, that balancing of integrity. So let's dive a little deeper on what really integrity means for the masculine, especially from a tantric perspective. Because as I've already said, hold on, let me take a drink. So, as I've already said, we have this definition of integrity that you can read, from the dictionary, or, maybe you were taught by your elders what integrity means. And I think that integrity overall, it's not like there's like a bad definition for integrity. And I think that by putting a tantric lens over integrity, there's a layer deeper that we can go. So to me, the masculine form of integrity isn't about just showing up and doing what you say. It's how you show up. It's how you be, how you do the things that you say you're going to do. And doing so with a level of depth and attunement to others and radical honesty. Another great way to think about integrity, especially because, I think that there's a lot of teachings out there, especially around polarity and men's circles, that really teach about being a masculine pillar. Specifically, I really enjoy the work. Well, actually, haven't read his book, but I've read some of backtrack. I really appreciate the work of David Data, and I have read a couple of his books, but his most renowned book is called The Way of the Superior Man. And I will say, without a doubt, Andrew read this book and our relationship changed overnight because of what he learned in the book. And a lot of the book is about the relationship between the masculine and the feminine. And it is based on polarity teachings. And I think that there are amazing polarity teachers. I think that there are shitty polarity teachers, just like there are amazing Tantra teachers and shitty Tantra teachers. And I also find that there's a lot of polarity teachings that don't fully honor the leadership of the feminine. And I've also gotten a lot from polarity teachings. But The Way of the Superior Man, in my opinion, really speaks to masculine integrity in relationship, from what I've seen and from what I've heard from other men that have read the book and are living embodiments of David Data's work. So there's this concept, right, in a lot of polarity teachings where the feminine will test the masculine, right? And sometimes this looks at like her being really emotional or triggered or chaotic or frustrating to the masculine, bratty sometimes even. And the idea is to kind of like push up against the masculine wall energetically and say, can you hold me in all of me? Can you hold me in the deepest depths of my shadow, my darkness, my love, my light? Like, can you hold me in all of it? And I'm gonna test you. A great example, I shared a story on the podcast as well, is like when Andrew and I were dating for not very long, we went to church and I put on this like very priestessy outfit and it triggered him. Like in my sensual expression, like that was a lot. And his interpretation was like, you're testing me, right? You're testing me. And in a way I was, and the thing is I didn't consciously choose that outfit. I didn't choose that outfit to say, ooh, I'm going to test him. Ooh, I'm going to like push his buttons and see if he can hold all of me. No, I was just like being my authentic feminine self. And in retrospect, it was a test. And I think that the best feminine tests are unconscious. And I'm pretty sure that David Data speaks to the work in a very similar way, in that he says that it's not so much a conscious action of the feminine, but it is up to the masculine to notice that and to hold her regardless. And I think that that's another piece of integrity that I just want to bring in like lightly. That's like could be like a whole other, deep dive into a conversation that we don't necessarily have time for today. But, the resolution, there's like a whole other podcast about this story with Andrew and I also talk about it in my book, Sacred Sex Ed. Shout out, bestseller. You can get it on Amazon, Sacred Sex Ed. If you haven't already, buy the book. It is also now available on audiobook, by the way. Also, just a little side note while I'm thinking about it. You can now have AI read your book so that you don't have to pay thousands of dollars and spend many, 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 many hours reading the audiobook and then re-listening and making sure that word for word everything is perfect. It's actually quite an intensive process to do an audiobook. I was planning on doing it, but then I found out about how intensive it is. And how strict they are about all of the specifications. And so I was like, I'm just going to wait. Like I was originally going to do it with my book launch and I decided to wait. And funny enough, now you can have AI do it and it's completely free through Amazon. So I was like, all right, let's just do that, at least for now. One day I would love to read that book. Maybe when a second edition comes out, we'll do a more formal audiobook. But if you like the podcast, you'll love the audiobook, I am certain. Okay, so just to tie a bow on the polarity teachings, if he meets the feminine, if he stays in integrity and is in deep attunement and meets this testing with presence, instead of defensiveness or collapse or taking her expression personally, she can actually relax deeper and trust is built in the process. Whereas if he fails the test, quote unquote, possibly by checking out, possibly by running away or avoiding, possibly by becoming really anxious and like almost like fawning to her or potentially gaslighting, blaming, she will feel it. And again, this goes for even if you like fawn and like submit to whatever the test is, like there's a balance, right? It's not just like letting her walk all over you either, but she will feel it. And trust will erode and the polarity will also weaken. And that's kind of like the basis of the testing in the polarity world. Now let's talk about the feminine integrity. Because I think that some of this testing can be misconstrued. And we're going to get into that in a minute. But first, overall, for the feminine, integrity is really staying in alignment with your body's truth and wisdom. It's being in alignment with the emotional current that's running through your body and not pretending, not plastering on a smile when things are shitty, not trying to push through or overdo it because you said you were going to do something. It's really surrendering to what is actually real and alive and raw and vulnerable in that particular moment. It could be seen as like finding God in your body. It can be seen as trusting your intuition, like, maybe even not having a reason that you're a yes or a no to something, but trusting that there's something bigger and your intuition is at play and being in integrity with that divine wisdom that's coming through. This is not about shrinking. It's not about performing. It's not about people pleasing at all. And I think that that's where the feminine and the masculine types of integrity can sometimes feel contradictory to each other and almost butt up, because I think that many people perceive the masculine integrity as pushing through. And in some ways it is. Like in some ways, the masculine integrity can look like sacrificing for the greater good or doing things you don't feel like doing because you recognize that there's a greater pleasure down the line, whether it's connection or impact or any number of things. Like an example would be like you said you were going to work out, you made a commitment that you're going to work out every day, and one day you wake up and you don't feel well and you're like, oh, like I could just not work out, or I could push through because I know that down the line I'm going to be really grateful that I was consistent and I didn't break that consistency. And look how amazing I feel in my body because of the masculine integrity that I had around working out. Now, an even better example of what this could look like, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later, is balancing the feminine and masculine integrity, right? So maybe you wake up one day and you're not feeling well, And instead of doing the really hard CrossFit workout, you decide to go for a walk instead, or do some light stretching instead, right? So that's where you're really balancing, like, okay, I'm in integrity with what I'm feeling in my body, which is the feminine integrity, but I'm also in integrity with my masculine side, which made the commitment to, work out every day. So just kind of a random example, but I felt like that was really important to kind of acknowledge and bring up. So sorry, I'm moving around my notes. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. And just staying hydrated in the process. So, I will also say that feminine integrity is about letting yourself be seen in your full spectrum as well as your full range. And this can very much be the exact frequency that tests the masculine in his integrity, that does that like feminine testing, right? So the feminine integrity allows herself to experience rage, anxiety, grief, deep desire, ecstatic pleasure, like the whole range, and trust that whatever is coming up in her body wants to be expressed. It wants to be felt. Our emotions are energy and motion, and we have to feel it to heal it. We have to honor it to fully keep ourselves from creating, blocks in our energetic system, because when we create those blocks in our energetic system, that, manifests as dis-ease in our bodies and in our energy. And that dis-ease can actually become a physical disease if we don't actually, work with it, right? So the feminine integrity is about, honoring all of that. Now, let's also speak to the mature version of the feminine is also a master of her emotions. She is able to alchemize rather than project as much onto others. So that's just an important clarification that's really valid here. And this is exactly why I think so many men, women, and myself have these moments where we don't trust women as much because they haven't quite matured into their feminine emotional alchemy. And that energy can be, potentially disruptive to a space, or fully take over the space and not really acknowledging the space that it's taking up, or the projection that it's being made onto someone else. Like there's a real value, and again, I've talked about this in past episodes, there's a real value in being able to fully own your emotional expression and ask for containment from someone else, or create containment for yourself, and then move that energy and ideally, turn that mess into some kind of message or art or, purpose, right? So, I'll also just share a brief story, around the same time where I was kind of figuring out this truth about integrity, and how I wanted to imply it in my life. It was around the time that my dog died, and it was like I was in this deep grief portal, and but at the same time there were social events that I wanted to go to and things that we were invited to, and I remember saying to Andrew, my husband, I was looking forward to this party so much, but now I don't want to go because I don't want to pretend like I'm okay, but I also don't want to be I don't want to also show up in the space and be moping around and bring the vibe down, and then also have people be asking me what's wrong, and trying to find that balance for myself, right? And doing what I can to alchemize that energy before stepping into the space. So it's not projecting into the space, but also, if someone comes up to me and asks how I'm doing, I'm not going to be like, I'm great. I'll say, you know what? I'm having the best time that I could possibly have, considering the fact that I am mourning losing my best friend, and just kind of see where the conversation goes, and being mindful not to, completely trauma dump onto someone. That's a great example of this feminine integrity being totally twisted, is being I'm being, in integrity with my emotions. And so I'm sharing what's alive for me. And it's but you're not being in integrity with the container, and it's not an appropriate time to trauma dump onto someone without their consent, right? So really great example. So the true like feminine integrity is about honoring the living truth in the moment, but honoring it from a space of responsibility and reverence and relational awareness. There's also a level of attunement that gets to happen with feminine integrity too, right? This distorted or shadowy feminine can use excuses to use feminine integrity as an excuse to make a decision that's actually going to erode trust. So for example, I have a lot of women that, I see that like cancel on things. This is like a huge piece, is like women, they're on their period, they're on their moon, and they say, oh, I'm actually feeling really shitty today, I'm going to have to cancel. Or like, oh, I have a headache, or like any number of things. And so these women are using like their truth or what they're feeling in their body as an excuse to cancel commitments, oftentimes like last minute, oftentimes very impulsively, which is doing a few things. Number one, it's disrespecting, another person's time. And it's avoiding accountability as well. It's not taking accountability. And also just like not really considering the deeper impact that that's going to have on the other person as well as on the relationship. And to me, this is where I'm really getting into like where, it can be difficult to trust women, because I don't, and like this is like broad strokes, like this is not how it is for every woman. I don't see all women like this. I also see men that do this shit as well. So like I want to put that out there. But by and far, I see women do this, and I've talked to like a lot of my female friends that I perceive as being like a more mature reflection of the feminine who don't do this shit, and they're experiencing the same thing. They're experiencing friends who make plans and cancel last minute, and then they reschedule, and then they cancel last minute again. And it's like, come the fuck on, like get your life together. This is not okay. And I've also talked to some of my male friends and my husband, but mostly my male friends, about this. And they have very similar experiences where they're like, what the fuck is actually going on? Like, I've moved around my life to fit in time with you, and now you're going to cancel last minute, or you're going to drop the ball last minute, or you're going to change the plan last minute in a way that's like not honoring all of the honoring and devotion that I created in my life and in my schedule for you. Like, it's really just disrespectful at the end of the day. And it's also entitlement, because what's happening, I see, is that these individuals, particularly some women, are seeing this emotional fluctuation or this fluctuation in their body as like they're sensing it as like almost like an authority, and like a spiritual authority that's like just not fully honest, right, or true, or again, like respectful. And oftentimes, I see women prioritizing their feelings over, the community and over relational agreements and over bonds that have been built or are building. Like, I see so many women that freaking sabotage incredible opportunities because of this sense of entitlement, as well as this like, I'm just listening to my body, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to your body. I'm not saying that it's like a total faux pas to cancel plans. I've done it. I've shifted. But there are things that you can do to clean it up and to make it more energetically clear and to stand in your power and in your integrity more in the future. Because if we don't clean up this energetic or emotional mess, it's just not in alignment with anyone's highest self. So it's not going to bring you like to what you actually deeply desire. It's like, to me, it's like a short-term gain for a long-term loss. And that's not the vibe. That's not the vibe that we're living in this tantric life. So we reclaim our sovereignty in these cases, in feminine integrity, by, figuring out ways to balance the masculine and the feminine versions of integrity. I am so turned on by the fact that thousands of souls are tuning into these words at different times, in different places, all across the world. But you know what really gives me a soulgasm? Connecting in real time. feeling the energy shift in the room, witnessing bodies soften, hearts open, and pleasure ripple through the space like wildfire. This is the magic of our live events in Austin, LA, and online, where we don't just talk about sacred intimacy, we truly live it and embody it. And if you're really ready to quantum leap into your full pleasure potential, you could spend years in therapy, or you could spend 4 days immersed in the ultimate tantric initiation at one of our signature retreats on a lush 46-acre horse ranch here in Austin, Texas. We have the Women's Pleasure Portal Retreat coming up over Lionsgate 8/8, which is arguably the best time of the year to manifest, by the way. This is going to be a sacred feminine rebirth and tantric awakening designed to help you reclaim your radiance and activate your most magnetic, turned on self. We also have the Tantra Love Retreat, which is co-ed and happens twice a year. This one is for singles and couples ready to crack open their hearts, deepen intimacy, and experience soul-melting tantric practices in a safe and sacred container. Your body already knows it's time. Join us at www.talktantratome.com/events or find the direct link in the show notes. Cannot wait to squeeze you and see you in real time. In Tantra, real feminine integrity can look a few ways. It can look like, my truth has evolved. I made a commitment and now that commitment is no longer in alignment. And I honor the impact it has on you. So how can you do that? You can actually say that. Like when you cancel a plan, say, oh my gosh, I'm really not feeling well today. I'm just using this example because I think it's a really powerful one and one that's the most common. I'm not feeling very well today. I'm really sorry to cancel last minute. I know that you made time for this and I just want to acknowledge that. And, you could even say, let me know if there's anything I can do to make it up to you beyond rescheduling, for example. And, the funny thing is rescheduling is not always an option as well. Another thing that you can do is do something like a nice gesture. So for example, I've canceled in the past, but then as a gesture, I'll get someone like a sweet gift or bring them a really nice treat or even send them flowers that day. Like I'm canceling, but here's some flowers in lieu of my presence, right? So those are all things that you can do to kind of think about how you can balance this. One thing you definitely don't want to do is cancel, apologize, then cancel again and apologize again. Let's get over this serial rescheduling. Yes, it does happen, but let's minimize it repeating. So that's an example. You can also address if you think that there might be a story underneath of it with the other person, you could say, I'm canceling because of X, Y, and Z reason. Not because of X, Y, and Z reason that you think they might be thinking, just to kind of get ahead of the game as well. So this is a space where as a divine feminine in integrity, your feelings matter, but your word is also sacred. And, your intuition, you're honoring your intuition and the holiness of it, but you're also able to see that your agreements are sacred contracts and worthy of devotion as well. So Tantra in general kind of treats integrity as a concept, as an energetic frequency. And the beautiful thing about this reality is that when you're in integrity, you are incredibly magnetic. And we're going to be deepening into that as well here in a moment. But first, I want to talk about how do you balance these sometimes seemingly contradictory forms of integrity, the masculine and the feminine integrity. So it's a dance, right? It's a dance. Dancing is such a great metaphor. It's a dance. These are two partners. They both deserve seats in your car. Neither one of them necessarily should be in the driver's seat all the time, but they both deserve seats in your car. So it is this dance of structure and surrender. It's just pretty much any other teaching that you would learn about the masculine and the feminine and finding balance. It's the same with integrity. And there will be seasons that require you to up-level different parts of your integrity, whether it be your masculine or your feminine. balancing these is about honoring your commitments as well as honoring your inner truth as it evolves. Because that's the thing, like so often we commit to things, we say we're going to do something, we join a container, whatever it is, and then the inner truth evolves as time goes on. And like, that's normal. That's life. Like, it's okay to change your mind. But as you're honoring that inner truth, can you also honor your commitment or find some way to honor the people that are now going to be impacted by you shifting your commitment? Can you renegotiate your commitment, for example? So, masculine integrity kind of says, I made a promise, I am trustable no matter what happens. But feminine integrity says, my truth is dynamic. And if something no longer serves me, I'm going to find a way to pivot. I'm going to find a way to pivot in a way that is in integrity. Okay. So this can look like, being clear about your commitments, but also letting yourself renegotiate. This can look like holding space for your shifting feelings, but not abandoning the structure that's creating that safety and coherence for you. And it can also look like really seeing the cycles of life that include, death and rebirth, but not using, emotions, which very often are fleeting, as an excuse to flake out or betray your own word as well. So, let's talk about attracting people with integrity, because maybe you're someone that's like, I feel like I'm like, yes, I'm so in integrity, but I have all these people around me that aren't, and I'm so frustrated. And maybe you're listening to this and you're like, fuck, like I've got some work to do to clean up my side of the street. There's no right or wrong here. But let's talk about attracting people with integrity. And the very first thing that you can do to attract more people in integrity is become more integrous yourself. So apply what you've learned in this podcast episode, and I will bet that you will attract more people very quickly that are also going to treat you with integrity and treat themselves with integrity and treat their word and the world with integrity. Now, another thing that is really, really important with attracting people with integrity is to set boundaries, to treat yourself as sacred. And when someone is acting out of integrity with you, you set a boundary. I have a great example of this. I'll give a few different examples. I'll give a personal example and I will give a relational example. I'll give a relational / personal example and a professional example. So let's start with a professional example. I think that this is one thing that, like, for me, it's really interesting. And I'm kind of getting into like my journey with integrity now as well, a little bit. But when I first started in the world of Tantra, I would say about 90% of my clients were men. And over the years, that ratio split to about 50-50. And last year, that number has now gone to more like 80% to 90% feminine, like I'm working with women, and 10% men. And one thing that I noticed, and I ran this by my friends because I was like, a lot of my friends just work with women, and I was curious because I've switched, right? I've flopped. But I have noticed that with women, there are far more women that commit to working with me and then change their mind, or, want to like shift the container completely, or it just takes a lot more to get them to commit, or they fail payments, etc. And the women that I work with, the women that I'm friends with, by and far, most of them are also like really powerful feminine leaders that also have a very, robust inner masculine that moves from integrity. And they share the same thing. They're like, girl, I've been going through this forever. It's not just you. So I was like, okay, great. It's not like my relationship in the business is making this weird. It's just women. That's part of why I'm having this conversation. I also have like other men that I like work with that work exclusively with women, or mostly with women, doing like yoni massage or, other like body work on women. And they also experience the same thing too. And so it's also not just like women to women, it's also women to men, professionally speaking. Also personally speaking, but we're talking about professional speaking right now. So an example, last year I had an incredible client, honestly, soulmate client by and far. except we worked together. We had like a 3-month contract. And I think it was a month into the contract, she was on a payment plan and the payment failed. And she didn't say anything to me, didn't acknowledge it. She also just stopped messaging me because part of our container included unlimited WhatsApp and unlimited text support. And so like it was also around my wedding time. There was a lot going on, but I was like doing my best and doing really, really well actually to check in on her every couple of days and ask, hey, how are things going? This and that. And I didn't notice that her payment plan failed. And my team doesn't track my one-on-one clients. They only tracked my container clients because I've never really had an issue with my one-on-one clients not paying. Or their payment failing, or someone canceling a payment without telling me. And I think that that's actually what happened. She canceled the payment without telling me. So like 2 weeks pass, and eventually I'm on the other side of my wedding and I finally have some time to like go in and do a little money date, and I still haven't heard from her. And it's been like 10 days or something. And so I go in and I notice, oh, she was supposed to make a payment like, 2 weeks ago and didn't make the payment. And so what I did was, I reached out to her and I said, I'm loving working with you. This is what I see possible for you. Like, this is what's already happened just in a month of working together. I want to keep working with you. And this is not okay. When like I am very forgiving. I'm very able to renegotiate contracts if need be. I'm able to pause if you need to pause and come up with the money, whatever it is, like whatever's going on. But I will not tolerate basically being ghosted. So here's what we can do. I'm still happy to move forward with working with you, but you get to make the rest of the investment. I'm not like, originally I allowed her to have the payment plan, said now if you'd like to continue working with me for these next 2 months, you're going to need to pay those 2 months up front. And you know what? I was so nervous to send the message because I'd never really had to do that before. And she responded to me and she said, thank you. Thank you so much. This is exactly what I needed. This is exactly why I hired you, because I knew that you were going to hold a solid masculine boundary with me. I have worked with and been a woman that works in this field where it's so tolerated to be airy-fairy and loose and la-di-da. And this is helping me. And we were in a business container. I was coaching her on business. She said, this is such a beautiful transmission for me because I am learning that it's okay for me to set those boundaries. And that's what it takes for me to get to the next level in my business, is that I need to mature that part of myself. So thank you for being evidence of that for me. Give me a week and I'll put together the rest of the investment for you. And I'm 1,000,000% wanting to continue. And guess what? She did. She did. And then we continued for 2 more months. And then she ended up additionally investing in another container of mine when we completed. You see what's possible, like how magnetic and sexy you can become when you live in integrity and you set these boundaries. So that's one example in the professional realm. I've also done similar things where, if someone, like says that they're a yes to a container and then suddenly they shift their mind like very suddenly, it's not like I won't like allow them into a container in the future, but they're not someone that I'm going to continue to reach out to and to like build a connection with. Whereas like I generally am pretty available for my audience that's interested in deepening with me. Like I would really need for them to prove to me that they're not going to make a commitment and then not follow through again. And that might be something that I would address actually directly with them. Or I might do something like, hey, like I'm happy to talk about working with me again. We can do a power hour. The rate for the power hour is XYZ. Here's the link to pay for the power hour. You're going to get transformation in this power hour, but on top of it, we can talk about next steps. Something like that is another way to be in integrity, on the professional side with and set boundaries to attract clients that are in integrity as well. Okay, let's give you a personal example now. So, and this actually comes from a friend, but I've done very similar things. I was talking to a friend a couple of weeks ago, and we have this mutual friend, and we both kind of like poured into each other in this energy of like, I'm really struggling, not really struggling, but I'm kind of struggling in this friendship. I'm struggling with deepening with, I'm just going to make up a name. I'm really struggling deepening with Allie. I'm struggling to deepen with Allie because she just always cancels. And so this woman said to me, she's like, yeah, it happened twice where Allie made a plan with me, said she was really excited to deepen connection with me, and then she canceled. And then it happened again. Like we made the plan and then she canceled. And so I told her, listen, it's not feeling good for me to continue to make these plans and make time in my schedule when you've now canceled on me twice. So I'm only willing to make a plan with you again if it's 100% you will be there. And the girl actually like didn't make another plan with her. She didn't make another plan with her. She's like, great, like that's fine. Like I don't have an issue. I would rather her not make another plan with me than do this yo-yo routine again where we're going to do this. I make the time in my calendar. I deprioritize other parts of my life and prioritize her. And then she's not prioritizing me. It's not cool. Interestingly, the same friend reached out to me like a week later and was like, hey, would love to connect with you. And I was like, great. We talked about a date. And then she did do something that was really good. And this is another example of something that you can do to be more in integrity especially as a feminine bodied individual, or even just like a sensitive person. Something that you can do is you can preemptively understand where your energy is going to be. So, and this is another reason why as a female embodied individual, I highly recommend that other female-bodied individuals get to know their cycle. So you can know the times where you're going to have a lot of energy for social obligations and other commitments, and also know when you might be a little bit more sensitive or prone to canceling. So something that I do a lot is someone will ask me, hey, like I'd love to grab dinner on X, Y, and Z date. And I'll look at my calendar and I'll say, I'm going to be on my moon at that time. Can we pencil it in and play it by ear the day of? Or how would you feel about me canceling that day? Like, would that be okay? Or would you rather just pick a date that's a little bit farther in advance? For me, I might like to, put the date in the calendar because I'm really excited to see this person. And we have a type of relationship where we've established that it would be okay for me to cancel. And I'll also say, hey, like I would do this with my best friend, Sophia, for example. Like I would say, I'm so excited to see you. Like I cannot wait to see you. So let's put it in the calendar for this date. But if it's like the first day of my cycle, do you mind if we like push it a day or push it a few days? Or we could even put an alternative date in the calendar. I might also say something like, I anticipate that day I'm going to be feeling a little tired, maybe a little crampy. So how would you feel about coming to me and we can just order takeout or something like that? So like finding a way that you can make it work, but like being in tune with your body, knowing your schedule, knowing the times where you might be a little bit more sensitive. Another example is travel. I do a lot of travel. And so that's a piece that I like to bring in as well. To say, yeah, like I'm going to be having a late flight the night before. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be totally in the right energy to go to a big party, for example. Another example, my husband, Andrew, has bipolar 2. There can be moments where he's a bit emotional or down or even manic. And so it can be helpful, like if we have plans as a couple to say like, especially if it's a big party or something that, he might not enjoy as much or might like be a lot for him. Like there's a lot of plant medicine journeys, for example, that happen in Austin. And it's not really great for him to like be in those atmospheres. And so we might say something like, how do you feel about us not partaking in the medicine or, leaving in the middle of a journey? Because that's a thing too. A lot of times for these like journeys, they want you to stay the whole time. And that's just not always possible for anyone. And especially someone that doesn't do medicine, which I don't really do a lot of medicine. I do a little bit, but I only do it very, very intentionally, very ceremonially. And like, let's be real. Like a lot of the journeys that people are doing in Austin are, I'm sure they're getting things from them. They are ceremonial. They are learning and growing. And like it becomes, microphone almost just fell. At a certain point, it becomes recreational. And there's nothing wrong with that. I want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with it. I also have a podcast episode while I'm thinking about it called Conscious Consumption. And I talk about a tantric perspective of alcohol and plant medicine. It's episode 60. Such a good episode. I'm someone that loves a glass of wine. I love a dirty martini. I have my like naughty behaviors too. I'm not like a Molly person. I do love mushrooms, but I'm not like doing cocaine or Molly or any of the other things. And I think that there are tantric ways that you can actually indulge in those types of substances. So, listen to that episode if you're curious about that and being in integrity with yourself and these medicines as well. So, that same friend, as I was sharing, reached out to me and was trying to make a plan. We picked a date, and then she said, actually, my travel plans have changed. I'm going to be flying in late the night before. So yeah, I don't think it's a great idea to meet that day. And so yeah, another just great example with this other friend, like her experience was like, great. Like, I'm going to set a boundary with you. If you want to make a plan with me, here's what I need. And everybody's different too. Like, a lot of people don't mind that more fluid, changing plans things. But I think that like, just because one person doesn't mind, that doesn't mean that you should take your liberties and assume that every person is going to be unaffected by your lack of integrity, right? So something to really think about, that it really depends on the relationship as well. Okay, let's go a little deeper into my own relationship with integrity and where I feel in integrity and out of integrity in this season of life, and the journey to really come into a state of wholeness. So I grew up in a pretty patriarchal culture, society, conservative culture in the Midwest. And so integrity was a value that was really instilled in me, actually, and I'm very grateful for it. And the definition of integrity for me, and the definition that was instilled in me, was one of doing what you say, following through on your word, living in integrity with your values. And those are all really amazing. So I feel that I've always had generally quite good integrity, especially from the masculine perspective. Where I've needed to develop my integrity more was actually in my feminine integrity. So throughout my childhood, teens, and into my early 20s, I really had this energy of like pushing through and toughening it out and overdoing it. And in a way that actually supported me to get where I am today. Like I did have some incredible opportunities, and I hustled really hard to like build the life that I have. And at a certain point, it became limiting, right? And on top of that, it also led to a lot of resentment with women in my life, because I would notice women in integrity and out of integrity shifting plans, canceling, not following through on their word, because, or from the place of, it's just not feeling like a yes for me, or I'm like, my body is like asking for rest today. And I would get so frustrated at these women, because I was like, dude, like, I'm busy, like I'm working, like I'm traveling, and like I set aside I have one day to like do social things, and I set aside that time for you, and I could have gone on a date, or I could have like booked a spa appointment, but instead, like, I can't do that now because you canceled literally 15 minutes before we were supposed to hang out. And that's not the whole story. That's not what's happened over and over again. But I'm just giving an example of like how frustrating it was for me. Over time, I became less frustrated. I became way more understanding, especially as I allowed myself more spaciousness to listen to my body and to treat my body like a mystery school. So it's actually really good for me, because in a way, these women were evidence of a possibility of a more evolved version of myself. But then there was this like noticing, okay, and there's a difference, right? There's a difference between honoring your body from integrity and from in respect to other people, and being an asshole, for lack of better word. And so that's really, what brings us to this conversation today. Like, but I just want to acknowledge, and this might be true for some of you, whether you're a man or a woman, that you might feel like a trigger towards women being in integrity with their body whether they're doing it from this holistic place or they're in their shadow a bit and they're not really honoring you. And I want to just like normalize that and say, hey, it's totally okay. And there might be a moment where you're able to tune in and say, am I so triggered about this woman canceling on me, changing our plan, whatever it is, not following through on her word, because I don't allow myself to change my mind. I don't allow myself to tune into my body. I don't allow myself to tune into my intuition in God. And so how dare her do it? Like if I can't do it, then she shouldn't be able to do it too. So this is a moment to just get curious about that for yourself, okay? Because that was true for me. So I did that, and then there was still this gunk left over of, and there are these other individuals that aren't following through from integrity. And I want to be real too. Like I've made mistakes. I've like listened to my body, quote unquote, and not clean things up energetically. And guess what? I learned my lessons, and like, it's okay if that's you too. And you're listening to this and you're saying, shit, I have really probably disrespected some people unintentionally from the entitled place of I'm listening to my body, and I get to clean up those relationships, or I get to let them go and move forward in a new light. That's also totally okay. So I just want to say like no judgment. I've been there. And that's why we're having this conversation so that we can all evolve together. We can all grow together. Like I'm sharing my mistakes, the places where I fucked up as well. Because like I want to just be vulnerable, and I know that vulnerability can be inspiring to others. So where does this bring me now? In the last couple of months, and I've talked about this on the podcast a little bit already. What episode did I talk about this on? This season of life, things just feel really different for me than they have ever in my life. And I talk about this a little bit in episode 191. It's called Confessions of a Pleasure Priestess. It's a really good episode. I got so much positive feedback from it. There are just certain episodes where I am inundated with comments and emails about the episode, and this one, Confessions of a Pleasure Priestess, was one of them. And that's kind of why I decided to do this podcast episode that I'm doing today, because I felt like there was a layer deeper to go. But highly recommend that episode. I share, I think it's like 7 confessions that I have in this season of life, and it's spicy, it's bold, it's great. It's a great episode. So if you're enjoying this episode, maybe think about going back and listening to that one to get even more of like a little BTS. But I recorded that episode a couple months ago. It's now been about a month and a half since I recorded that episode. And I'm still feeling very different about my life than I've ever felt before. And there have been moments where I have felt a little bit like questioning, am I in integrity, especially in regards to what I'm sharing on social media and my business. So I have been very fortunate to build this incredible pleasure-led multiple 6-figure business that I love. I love it so much, in fact, that I have made it my entire personality pretty much. And here's the thing. Zero regrets about making my business my entire personality. And I am moving into a new season where other parts of my personality are wanting to be expressed. And I am getting a really clear emotional signal that I cannot not listen to any longer. And how that has shown up is, discontentment. And to me, discontentment is a sign that something is off that gets to be shifted. And same with anxiety. There's also been a lot of anxiety. There's been days where I'm like, am I depressed? And to me, all of these more low vibration energies oftentimes are concealing some piece of you that is wanting to be seen and likely evolve and grow with you. So, everybody has days of anxiety. Everybody has days of discontentment. And so that happened. And it was really interesting because for me, it was like a flip switch. Like I actually got off of like one of the best weeks that I could possibly have. We just finished the Tantra Love Retreat. It fucking smashed. It was amazing. But it was like a flip switch a couple days later where suddenly I was like, ugh, feel really depressed. And like a lot of times after the retreat, I need a couple of days to recover, but then I'm like really excited to get back into it because I just saw and witnessed all this transformation and I want to do more. I want to create more transformation in the world. But this time was different. And I felt really off and I felt a lot of resistance to going back into my business. And first it was like a couple of days and I thought, okay, it's fine. Like I'm still recovering, normal. But then it was like a week and I was down. Like I was really not myself. And at a certain point, I started to tune in and notice like, okay, things within me are shifting, which again, I talked a lot about in the other episode. And it's interesting because I was launching, like I was like, talking about different things that I'm like wanting to like bring to the world and like share about with excitement because these offers and the transformation that's available are worth it. Like they deserve all of me in my excitement, and the excitement just wasn't there. And the like general pleasure-led Leola was like kind of in a different rut. And I was trying to share things on social media about, what was possible. But like at a certain point, or like trying to write these really powerful Instagram posts. But at a certain point, I was like, you know what? Like this is out of integrity for me. And I do know a lot of coaches and influencers that don't really talk about these deeper portals they go to. They don't really talk about their personal life. I'm going to tell you, I've hired these individuals and gotten really intimate with some of them, and they have them too. Like, it's not just like, if they're not sharing it, they're not going through these portals. They absolutely are. It's a different strategy, right? Like, there is a different strategy of having an image and wanting to portray this really strong image, and how powerful and magnetic that can be, for some people. And for me, that's just not my path. It's not. Like, when I try to do it, it feels like so uncomfortable in my system. It feels so fake. It feels so off. And I'm not saying that these people, some of them I will say are fake, but not all of them. Like some of them are my dear friends that I love and cherish. And I respect that like they have a sacred boundary with what they share and what they don't. And there are still things that I have boundaries around that I don't share. And like, I can't show up on this podcast, on Instagram and be like, things are great when I'm going through a dark night of the soul. Okay. Like, it's just not possible for me. And so I was really real about it. I shared a bit about it on that podcast episode. I also shared about it on my social media. And yeah, like honestly for me, like as soon as I shared it with you guys, it was such a sigh of relief. I felt so much better afterwards. Because again, like to me, it was like, okay, and now I feel like I'm in integrity. It's that idea that like when you're out of integrity, everything is going to feel off. And for me and my definition of integrity and how integrity moves in my body, I have to share what's going on for me with you guys, or I have to just not say anything at all. What I definitely can't do is pretend like everything is okay when it's not. So I did share it and that felt a lot better. So that's kind of where I'm at with integrity in this season. And what I'll also say is like a lot of things are still evolving for me in my personal life and in my professional life. What I can say is that I love this part of my personality, and making my business my entire personality it's like, in so many ways, it's validated me from like every corner of life. Like in every corner of life, I have been rewarded for making my entire business my personality, and the transformation that I create too. I think that it's like it's not fair to talk about my business just as like a business, because it's a transformation that's available for people, which is much bigger and a little bit sexier to make your entire personality. But it's rewarded me in so many ways. I mean, obviously, like day in and day out, getting, incredible glowing testimonials, getting messages of gratitude, like seeing the shift like in someone's aura and in their actions and how they show up from before this work to after. Like it is so validating. On top of that, I've been rewarded in my relationships as well. I literally wouldn't have met my husband if it weren't for this work. So, I mean, my entire circle of friends, my closest friends in this season of life, I have old friends that are still amazing and that I love dearly and knew me before this work, but all of my Austin friends really, and many of them are my closest friends in this season of life, I wouldn't know them without my work. I mean, my into the current friend group that I'm in is because, I hired a woman, which I was really only able to do because of this work. And then she was like, you're amazing. I love what you're doing. I love your mission. I want to introduce you to all my other feminine, entrepreneurial, badass world changers. And so again, like incredibly rewarded for making my business my entire personality. The house that I live in is because of this work. Like the abundance that I have is because of this work, because of stepping into my purpose. And so I have been incredibly validated and rewarded for making my business my entire personality. And I'm in a really luxurious place in this season of life where I don't need to do that anymore. And in fact, it is no longer expansive and liberating for me, because it wasn't bad or wrong that I did that. It actually was very much in alignment with the higher self that I now embody, that I once envisioned. And I'm now at this place where I have this opportunity to relax into spaciousness and a different type of peace and bliss and expression than I have in years. And, I'm thinking about like in past seasons of life, I used to write poetry. Like I used to write a poem every single week, and I would launch like a photo series. I'm curious if anyone listening to this is here from those days. There was a period where I had the podcast and I was still doing this, but I actually still have people that are subscribed to my art page, where every week I would release a photo series of me. Most of them were artistic nudes, and a poem that like matched the energy. And they were really beautiful poems, like poems about being a sacred rebel and poems about being free and liberated. And like they were really high vibe, beautiful poems. And very inspirational for people. Like one day I'll probably release a poetry book as well, but TBD. So yeah, and there was a time though where I remember saying, this is now taking up a lot of my time and energy to do these photos and the poem every week. And I'm feeling more called to what feels more in alignment with my higher self. What feels more liberating and expansive is to set aside Leola, the creative writer and muse, and put all of my energy and creativity into Leola, the pleasure priestess, Leola, the sacred intimacy mentoring muse. And I made that decision very intentionally and consciously. And it was bittersweet because I am those things. I still am a muse and an artist, and I love fashion, and I love decoration, and I love gardening, and I love being all these other things too. And this season of life, it's time to become more of those things. And some of what that's looked like is setting aside arbitrary rules and expectations that I've put on myself and that I've taken on as what it means to be a successful businesswoman. And one of those things is creating a program for everyone. Like this is one thing that like to me is no longer in integrity purely. And thankfully, I've already created a lot of things in my business. So like legitimately anyone can come into my business now and there's something for them, but it's time for me to retire putting all of my energy into making sure that every single person has somewhere to go. And a great example of this is like in the last episode of the podcast, The Confessions of a Pleasure Priestess, I talk about how I'm working more with women in this season of life. And that's really where I'm finding my greatest impact and joy and pleasure. But there's been like men that have reached out and are like kind of triggered that I'm like no longer like I did this podcast episode about like a women's retreat, and a guy like sent me this message that was like, wow, you should really create something like this for men because men also need this work. And I'm like, yeah, like we have the Tantra love retreat. That's co-ed. You can go there. But like, I'm not going to lead a men's retreat. Like that just doesn't make sense for me. It's not my desire. It's not like, I mean, technically like I could totally do it. I've worked with a ton of men, and it's not an integrity for me in this season of life because that's not where my greatest joy and bliss and pleasure is. And it would be taking away from the places where my joy is calling me, which is clearly where I'm meant to be. I truly believe that if you do what you love, the rest will follow. And it's not like I couldn't find like right relationship with a men's retreat, but it just doesn't make sense. Okay. So like that's one example. So what that's been looking like is actually transforming some of my containers. One of those things are the Higher Love Club. So the Higher Love Club, I love the Higher Love Club. It's not going away, but it is evolving. So, previously this was a co-ed low ticket membership that had live calls and anyone could join, men, women, any age. I loved this container because there was such a breadth of humanity. And in this season of life, I'm preparing for motherhood and things need to come off the plate. And this is one of the places where it's starting to feel a little bit more obligatory. And there's already all this amazing content in there. So you can still join the Higher Love Club. There's over 60 hours of incredible tantric teachings that go deeper than this podcast and are a bit more embodied in nature, but there's not going to be any live calls anymore. So we're lowering the price of it. We're making it actually even more accessible than it was before, but we are going to be taking away the live calls. So that's one thing that we're doing. Another thing, Andrew and I are pausing doing events at our house for the time being, probably like not indefinitely, but just for like a couple of months. Just generally speaking, I am pausing, aside from our retreat in the fall, I am pausing all live events that I have to market or fill the room for. So I am available in this season for things to come to me. So very beautifully, serendipitously, a connection at Soho House has asked me to come and do a once a month series on Tantra for their members. Sure, like all I have to do is show up, do my magic for a few hours, hang out in a cool vibe with cool people. That feels mwah. But I'm not as feeling lit up by like the pressure of making sure that we have a play party and I've got to make sure we've got like an equal number of men and women and like make sure that the house is clean and we've got the cleaners coming and my assistant come and like there's just so many more factors when you're running a thing. Like people think that like facilitation is like showing up and being in your magic, and it is, but there's also like that's like 20% of it. There's like a whole other 80% of like planning, prepping, and marketing and selling that people don't talk about as much and is a huge piece as well. So I'm happy to set aside that 80% for the most part for at least a couple of months and focus on the 20% that's just me showing up in my magic. So opportunities that are coming to me, full fuck yes for. By the way, if you're like in like a big city in the US, super happy to come to you. If you fill a room, I will show up in my magic. Obviously we'll need to make sure that my expenses are covered and like I make some money off of it. But if you have a community that's set and you want to learn from me, I'm happy to collaborate with you and you do that 80% and I'll do that 20%. Okay. So that's another piece that we're doing. We probably will do some more events at the house, maybe later in the summer or into the fall. But for now, I'm pausing them. And another piece is that I'm probably going to be taking a break from social media as well as this podcast again. I'll talk about social media first. So social media is so addicting. I feel like I actually have a decent relationship with it now. I talk about this again a little bit more in the Confessions of a Pleasure Priestess podcast, but I've set some really good boundaries with social media and my phone and I feel good about it. And again, like that account that I have, Talk Tantra to Me, is really just about this work. And like I talk about my personal life a bit and like I show my outfits and stuff. But I think it would be really good for me to just like have a break from such an outward focus of Leola, the Tantra teacher, and just make a little bit more space for like at least a couple of months to be creative in other ways and like just explore these other parts of my personality. So I will be taking a little bit of a break from social media. Honestly, it's probably just going to be like a week. It might be longer. It might be like a month. It might be 2 months. But I'm not someone that does really well with like harsh extremes. I do a lot better with like I'm not like 0 to 100. I'm like more of like a steady builder. And I also don't think it's necessary for me to take a whole month off, but I think I will take off like probably I've in the past I've taken off like a few days off social media at a time. I still do that right now. Like we were just in Paris and I took off like the entire time we were in Paris. But I think like a little bit of a longer stint and then having more like regular days where it's like a day or two where I don't go on and then I'm back on for a day or two. And then I have 3 days where I'm off and then I'm back on for a week. And then I take 5 days off. Like I'm just going to be a little bit more in flow over the next couple of months and not be on social media as much, probably. And definitely take a little bit of a break. Now the podcast, this is one that's really interesting because for those that have been following along with the podcast for a while, I ran it for like 3 or 4 years straight without any breaks. And like for the first 2 or 3 years, it was an episode every single week. And then last year in the spring, I went down to once every other week. And then at the end of the year, I took a pause and I wasn't even sure if I was going to bring it back. Podcast isn't going anywhere. It is coming back for sure. I can say with absolute certainty it's coming back. And I think I'm going to do a more seasonal vibe. Like I think I'm going to take off at least a month, probably 2 months. And then I'll come back in like July and we'll do another season. And then I'll take off over the holidays and then I'll come back in February. Like that's feeling really good for me. And this is when I talk about like arbitrary rules. Like I set this arbitrary expectation / obligation that I was going to release in a podcast episode regularly, and I took on the belief that I had to do that to be successful. And guess what? When I took a break over the winter, it literally didn't affect my business in any way that I would like obviously know. And I've talked to other entrepreneurs that have done the same thing, where they had a podcast and they took it out with the intention of bringing it back, and their business like numbers didn't change at all. So they actually just didn't bring it back. But I do love the podcast. That's one thing that I learned from my break is I love the podcast, but I'm like dropping this obligation. I think that that's the beauty of like when you've built a business to a certain point, it can kind of coast for a minute. And like, that's like, I love that I'm in that season where I can like kind of coast a little bit on what I've built and just allow more opportunities to come from me. I'm less in my like huntress era and more in my queen bee vibe. Let the bees come to me. So that's feeling really good. So this will probably be the last episode for a couple of months. I might do one more, but I think that this is going to be it. And then I'll see you guys back in July probably. But let me just review my notes and see if there's anything that I'm missing that I really, really want to talk about that I haven't talked about. Yeah. Oh, I just feel like it's kind of interesting to share that this like idea of, wow, I've let my entire personality become my business came over Easter weekend. Like I'd been building up, like there have been months of like things are off and I feel my identity shifting and like I'm kind of becoming a different person. But over Easter weekend specifically, I felt this like desire to resurrect the parts of myself that I've been putting on the back burner the last 5 or 6 years as I've been putting my business on the front burner and Tantra on the front burner. And so I just love like how divine the universe is like that, you know, over Easter, we're celebrating the resurrection of Christ. And I was also resurrecting divine parts of myself. So yeah, I think that that's it. I think that's all for today. One last thing that I'll mention just as like a little sidebar. I still am taking, you know, one-to-one clients. I'm still running Pleasure Priestess. I'm still running the Tantra Love Retreat. So would love to see you in any and all of those containers. And I'll also add that, again, so much of my ability to lean back in this season and let things come to me, so much of that luxury, like of leaning into this empire that I built, and has since brought in multiple 6 figures over the past 3 years, and 6 figures before that. Like the reason that I'm able to do this and have this luxury is because of the business that I built, this pleasure-led business that's balanced with masculine and feminine dynamics and integrity as well. And I created a course all about this called Business and Pleasure. And I highly recommend you check it out if you're wanting to have this type of life where you can be in calibration and have seasons such as this and not feel like you've got to push through because you're like on your last dollar and you're living paycheck to paycheck. Because I don't want anyone to feel like that. And like, honestly, that's out of integrity with like, if you're pushing in your business, it's like out of integrity with yourself and your mission. And like, it's just not a vibe. And you don't have to push to build a multiple 6-figure business to a degree. Like there definitely is a hustle, especially as you're building, but you're doing it for this long-term pleasure. So I highly recommend checking that out. Business and Pleasure. There is a VIP option that includes one-on-one coaching with me as well. So just popping that there as well. All right. Thank you so much, loves, for tuning in today. I cannot believe that this has been almost an hour and a half conversation. I was like, today's going to be a short one. It's going to be like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Sheesh. Just get me talking. Have a sexy and spiritual day, and I'll catch you next time on Talk Tantra to Me. Mwah. Over the years, I've been approached by many pleasure-based companies to promote their products, but I've only ever said yes to one person because I genuinely love these products so much, as well as the woman behind them. Wands, spelled W-A-A-N-D-S, is a crystal pleasure toy company, and they have been a part of my Tantra journey since the beginning. And they're not just toys, they're truly activators and beautiful sacred pieces of art that foster deep self-connection, pleasure, and transformation. These 100% pure crystal wands and yoni eggs help you unlock your body's wisdom, clear energy blockages, and amplify your pleasure, whether alone or with a partner. And it's not just about the products. For me, it's about the heart and the soul behind them. And the owner, Courtney, I absolutely adore her. She's been so generous to offer you, my beloved listeners, an exclusive 15% off with the code Leola, Leola. So if you're ready to honor your sacred sexuality and awaken your sensual energy, stepping into a pleasure-filled life, head to wands.com. Again, WAANDS, 2 A's, and use code Leola for 15% off. And you can always find the link directly in the show notes. Trust me, you're going to thank me later.